So today's Torah portion is Lech Lecha, and I want to bring everybody up to the storyline, so we're all on the same page. For those who haven't joined before, those who are new, we're going to go back a little bit in time. So we did the creation of the world, the first man, the first woman. Then we had the story of Noah with the flood. And then we had the story of the Tower of Babel. They built a tower and it collapsed. And now we're coming to one of the most pivotal, fundamental, beautiful Torah portions, which really outlines for every single human being on earth and for us as Jewish people, how to approach life. What is life? What is our mission? What is the foundation? And what is your journey? What is my journey? So first of all, who bought a lottery ticket? I understand it's like $1 billion. So I called my sister and you bought one, Jane?
Yes.
Good. Don't forget how to spell my name. Freida. Okay.
Romulus.
Good. I'm also buying another ticket today, I think. Who doesn't want to have one chance in 248 million to win a lottery?
Yeah.
I just read. So you know the story of the lottery ticket. So there's a poor guy in the shtetl. He has to marry off his daughter. So he doesn't have any money. He doesn't know what to do. Good morning, Margaret. So he is walking in the village, marketplace, and the guy is selling lottery tickets. So he figures he'll buy a lottery ticket. He buys a lottery ticket, and everybody in this village is praying that this poor guy wins because he has to marry off his daughter. Anyway, the local thief hears that this guy bought a lottery ticket, and he's known to be a very honest, good guy. So the thief thinks to himself, I'm going to buy a lottery ticket. I'll never win. God is never going to let a thief win, but he's bound to win because he's such a good, nice, pious guy. So I'm going to go and swap his ticket with my ticket. He buys a ticket, he breaks into the guy's house, and he swaps the ticket. And the next day, guess who wins the lottery? The pious guy wins the lottery. Wow, unbelievable. But guess what? With whose ticket? The thief says, oh, no. I'm not going to let this pass. And he goes and brings him to the rabbinical court. At that time, the rabbis would decide all these kind of arguments. They wouldn't go to the civil courts because they were very anti-Semitic and persecuted the Jews. So he brings the pious Jew and he tells the story. He says it was really my ticket. I deserve to win. So he should give me the money, even though he swapped the tickets. So the head of the rabbinical court was a very wise man. He says to the thief, we cannot rule in your favor because you have to know it's never really about the numbers on the lottery ticket. It doesn't matter if he was holding your ticket or his own ticket or someone else's ticket. God chooses who will win the lottery. And it doesn't matter what ticket you're holding. It's really who God wants should win. That's who will win the lottery. So really it gives us tremendous perspective. Sometimes we think to ourselves, am I in the right place? If I would have been there, I would have done much better. If I was over here, I could have really succeeded. But we don't realize that where we're put, where we are, is where we're meant to be. And I think we're going to see it in the story of what happens now with the first matriarch and first patriarch of the Jewish people. Now, who knows who they were? Anybody?
Abraham and Sarah.
Abraham and Sarah, the quintessential couple. The quintessential couple who are the prototypes of who we want to be in our lives. They had a magnificent marriage. They had a magnificent life, full of challenges, but they are the couple that you look up to and say, I want to be like them, as we'll soon see. Now I'm going to ask you a quick question, and then we're going to move into the story. Remember the story of Noah, right? Noah and his wife Naamah and their 3 sons and their 3 wives are on the ark, and they get saved. No one else gets saved. The whole world is eradicated. But Noah and his family are saved together with all the animals. Why is it Noah the first patriarch with his wife, matriarch? Wasn't Noah, we said last week, the righteous? He was a tzaddik. He was ethical. He was moral. That's why he was saved. Why was he not the first patriarch and his wife the first matriarch? Why do we start now with Abraham and Sarah? Anybody can figure out why. I'll tell you why. 120 years he's building the ark. Remember we discussed it last week? Why? God wanted the society to see that there's going to be a flood, and you have an opportunity to repent. You have an opportunity to mend your ways and also be saved. How many people were saved? Not one person. They mocked him, they scoffed him, but he wasn't able to influence even one person to mend their ways. So although he was righteous in himself with his wife and his family, he was not an influencer. He was not on Instagram or social media able to influence society to mend their ways. A matriarch and a patriarch, besides being righteous and good, they have to be able to impact society, impact the world, impact people. Be true leader. A true leader doesn't create followers. A true leader creates leaders, as we'll soon see. That's why Abraham and Sarah become the first patriarch and matriarch of the Jewish people, because you'll soon see that they impact society. They transform people's lives. And there's a very interesting passage that starts off, and let's begin. I'm going to read it so everybody gets a little taste. So now Abraham is a little boy living in Mesopotamia. And the whole story, if you remember, his father is one of the largest manufacturers of idols. And he goes and he says, there must be something more to life than worshiping a piece of stone. First, he thinks the sun is God, but then the sun disappears at night. Then he thinks the moon is God, but then the moon disappears. Then he thinks maybe the stars, but the stars disappear. So he realizes God is not defined. God is infinite. And he discovers God. I'm not going to go into the whole story. He destroys some of the idols. His father says, what are you doing? He says, what do you mean? They had a fight. He said, how could idols fight? And Abraham basically goes against the wave and tide of society that worships idolatry. Now he's 75 years old, married to his beautiful wife, Sarah. She's absolutely beautiful inside and out. And the voice of God for the first time is heard. Vayomer Hashem el Avram. God says to Abraham, Lech lecha mi'artzecha, go out of your country, u'mimaladetcha, go out of your birthplace, u'mibeis avicha, and the home of your parents, el ha'aretz asher erecha, to the land that I will show you. In this one sentence comes forth one of the greatest calls to each and every one of us. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, tells a story that his father, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Shalom Dov Ber, read this passage, and whenever he read it, he cried. Why did he cry? What's so emotional? Did anybody here cry when I read this? It's a beautiful passage. What's the tears? But what his father saw in this passage is that over 4,000 years ago, God called out to Abraham and Sarah and told them to leave everything behind and go to a place I'll show you. God doesn't even say where to go. And this is not only a call to Abraham and Sarah. This is a call to you, to me, and all the descendants of Abraham and Sarah. That if you're sensitive, you can hear a call to you. At any moment in your life, you could be 75 years old, you could be 21, you could be 41, you could be 32, to go out of your paradigm. Go away from things in your life that are holding you back. Anything that's holding you back. Anger, misery, unhappiness, anything that holds you back in life and puts you in a place that you don't feel you can be the best version of yourself. And we're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. So the call to Abraham and Sarah, what his father saw and cried, is a call 4,000 years later and today to each and every one of us to lead, step up, and sometimes step out of your comfort zone of different parts of your life that have shaped you, formed you for the good or the better or for worse, and go find where you're meant to be and how you're meant to be. This is what his father saw in this passage. And it's a very cryptic passage. God says, Lech Lecha, go for you. Now, if I was going to tell you, go to Italy, go to school, go to work, would I say, go for you to work, go for you to Italy? What is God saying? Go for you. Wrong grammar, wrong terminology here. And then God is telling him, leave the country, leave your hometown, leave your parents' home. Now, if I tell you to leave the country, aren't you leaving your parents' home? Aren't you leaving your hometown? Why is God saying all three things? We know that the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, are so concise that every letter, every word, every nuance matters. Because the 5 books of Torah are, like I always say, shorter than Herman Wouk's Winds of War or Harry Potter, the Sorcerer's Stone. So it means every word is thought out because it's God's words. So God should have just said, leave the country. If you're leaving the country, you're leaving your hometown and you're leaving your parents' home. So you might say emphasis. God wants to emphasize how Abraham is leaving everything behind. Okay, very nice. But if you're emphasizing that, then you have to do reverse. Leave your parents' home. Then you leave your hometown. Then you leave your country. So it's backwards. First you leave, right? First you leave the parents' home. You then leave your hometown. Then you leave the country. So there must be something here that is there to teach us something. That's the second question. And now the third question. God says, to the land I'll show you. Where? Where is he going to put in ways? How is he going to know how to get there? Does he need warm clothes? Does he need winter coats? Does he need to pack for 1 month? Does he need to pack for 2 months? Right? Where am I going? You're telling me to go to the land I'm going to show you. So Denise, pack up your bags. I'll tell you where to go. Where? Which airport? So if God is telling him to leave, why not give him a destination? We all know the destination. What's the destination? Where was Abraham going to end up? Anybody know? Remember? The Holy Land of Israel, Canaan. Right? That's the promised land. So why couldn't just God say very nicely, Abraham, Sarah, time to pick up and go to the land of Israel. He says, to a place I will show you. So let's now analyze a little bit what's going on over here. To the place I'll show you. So why does God say, Lech Lecha? Go for you. Anybody can figure this out? Shir, don't be shy. There's no wrong answer. In this class, there's never a wrong answer.
Free yourself.
Very good, for yourself. What does that mean, Margaret, for yourself?
Well, free yourself from your influence of your parents and, your town and whatever it is that you're leaving behind and start new.
Okay, very good. So lecha means God is telling him, go for your benefit. Lecha, for your benefit. The journey we take in life is for our benefit, so we could become a better version of ourselves. So for your benefit, God tells him. So 3 things: for your benefit, go by yourself, which means to yourself, by yourself, Because Abraham, remember, was the only one at that time who believed in monotheism, one God. Everyone else worshipped idolatry. It was a society of idolaters. They all worshipped stone and wood and sculptures and figurines. They prayed to these idols, which sounds ridiculous, but that was society at the time. So go buy yourself, God is telling him. You're the only one who believes in one God. The only one who believes in the Creator, in the infinite God. And go to yourself is the third analogy. You have to sometimes go into yourself to find out who you are. Journey is not only traveling in a boat, in a car, in a ship, in a plane. It's a journey inside, internal journey. Many times it's not really what's happening outside, we all know. It's always about what's happening inside of us. So 3 things God says for your benefit, because you're going to become your truest self. By yourself, because no one else is like you and Sarah. No one believes in a God. So you got to get away from that place. And thirdly, to yourself, because you have to, sometimes change comes it always comes from inside. You know the story of the Jewish boy became a Buddhist monk. He was searching for truth and he ended up as a Buddhist monk. 20 years later, he wakes up one morning, he's starving. He hasn't eaten in years because they eat very minimal. He must get himself a deli sandwich from Brooklyn, New York. Gets on a plane, travels to Brooklyn, New York. And you know, they also don't speak. You're only allowed to say a few words every day. Comes into the deli. Moish behind the counter says, "What can I get you?" He sees a Buddhist monk standing there. He says, "Hot dog." "Yeah, hot dog. But what do you want on your hot dog?" He says, "One more word, everything." So the guy piles on a hot dog with full of every topping you can imagine. And the monk hands him a $50 bill. And he's standing there. 5 minutes later says, "Moish, what do you want?" Moish says to the guy, "What do you want? Why are you standing there like a klutz? Go eat your hot dog." So the monk says, "Change." So Moshe looks at him and says, "Change? Change comes from within." He tells him, "You want change? Change comes from within." And he kept the $50. Anyway, so change comes from within. So God tells Avram, "Go to the place I'll show you." So this first one analysis here that's very important. If you come to somebody and you say to them, "Listen, you have to get rid of your addiction. You have to get rid of your habit. You have to get away from your anger, your misery, your unhappiness, whatever it is that you want to change." You have to give a person an alternative. If you don't want them to be here and you want them to be there, you have to say why, where to be. So God is telling Avram, leave here and go there. So first of all, we right away see that God is giving Abraham a destination. But why isn't he telling him where to go? Does anybody know? The Kabbalah says something very fascinating here. Why doesn't God tell him where to go? What's the big deal? Give him the destination.
Because you have to trust.
Very good. You have to trust. Develop that. What is the trust? What does that give you?
That it's like, it's one step at a time. It's like that it doesn't come all at once. It's baby steps.
Very good. Very good. You're on the right track. So
it's almost like when you say to a child, "Come, I'll show you something."
yes, very good. But you don't show them what, right?
But they don't, because they're going to ask too many questions and they're going to get distracted. And you just have to show them, you trust me that it's going to be great.
Very, very good. Along the right path. So Erecha means the land I will show you. The land that will allow you to become the best version of you. And a land, says the Al-Sheikh, which is a very famous commentary, I will bring you to a land to show you who you really are. But now, going back to what Rochelle said, the reason God doesn't say where is because this is part of the process of change, of a paradigm shift. Imagine, Margaret, you're an artist. Imagine you want to paint a beautiful piece of art on a canvas. and you're given a dirty canvas, a canvas that was used, full of paint and spatters. You're going to first have to wash down the canvas and then start fresh. Or a blank canvas will allow you your greatest expression. By God not telling Abraham and Sarah where they're going, he's giving them the ability to actually come there with a clean slate. No preconceived notions. You know, sometimes they say, when we get there, this is what's going to be A, B, and C. And then you have these preconceived notions and they weren't right. And you're disappointed. You're let down. Or you're like, what? This is not what I signed up for. So by God just saying to Abraham, follow me, I'll tell you where to go, he's allowing him even a greater ability to change his way of life, his lifestyle, and go into a place where he will find his greatest growth. Sometimes you got to start without preconceived notions, nothing on the plate, nothing. It's very hard to unlearn when you learn something wrong. Am I right? Sorry, go ahead, Rochelle. What were you saying?
I was just going to say that it's also very empowering to say it that way, because if you say, go, like, I'm going to take you here, I'm going to do it for you, this is what it is, this is, you know, it's like giving it to you on a silver platter, and it's more, you're a part of the process. And a part of the process is trusting not only God, but like yourself to be listening to those messages and shaping it and following through. So it's not just God doing for you, you're doing it for you in partnership with God.
Beautifully said. Maybe you want to take over the class?
I have to tell you, like, I could cry from listening to this. I know it's my first class, but I went to I went to a yeshiva when I was younger, and I went to Solomon Schechter, and it was never taught to me like this. I've never heard Judaism taught like this. And it's almost bringing me to tears, because what you're saying is what I've learned through my own experience in connecting with that higher power. And I didn't realize that that was coming through in the Torah, which is crazy, because that I'm like, oh, the Torah says what I know to be true. That's crazy. I never heard it taught like this. And that's really sad, but also amazing that it's there.
Thank you. That's so you and the Rebbe, when you heard the call, it's personal. That's a very beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing. Really, it touches me very deeply. I have to tell you honestly. So exactly that. I couldn't say it better than Rochelle, that sometimes it is the mystery, the unknown, that allow us to come into a place and see it as it's meant to be seen, where no one describes it. No one tells you before. How you told me? Why didn't you tell me this painting, this museum was so unbelievable? Because I needed you to experience it yourself. You know, like in the Karate Kid, just to give an example. Remember the Karate Kid? He's being bullied. He comes to the master sensei, says, teach me how to defend himself. So he has him painting the fences up and down. And then he has him doing all these weird things. Bang in and bang out. Bang in. And he finally yells at him after a few months, what are you doing to me? I'm your handyman. So he takes him in and he begins teaching him. And he shows him that the skills he was showing him were a preparation for the self-defense. In other words, he couldn't have him, he needed a clean slate before he could teach him anything. Don't come to me with any preconceived notions of what self-defense is or martial arts. So this is the same idea, a clean slate. I'll show you where to go. And this is one of the 10 tests that God gives Abraham and Sarah. There were 10 pivotal tests. Before we move on to something which I love to share, I want to share one more insight based on Kabbalah and Hasidus, which is Jewish mysticism. And I've said it in previous classes, but it's very important to bring it up one more time. Maisa avai simin labanim. Whatever the matriarchs and patriarchs did has cleared the path for our generation, for all generations. Which means by the way, when the London Bridge was built, and now they had a bridge over those waters, right? The next generation benefited from now having a pathway. because they didn't have to drill the holes, put in the beams, put down the wiring and the poles and everything. By the way, the London Bridge was built by a blind person. Did you know that? The architect of the London Bridge did not see. Just an interesting tidbit. So when Abraham and Sarah cut through, metaphorically speaking, the jungle and created a path, a spiritual path for us, to allow us to journey forth when we have to. So by them being able to take a journey, not knowing where they're going, and paving the way for all of us to be able to take that very journey when we need to take that journey, internally and externally, but mostly internally. So the Lech Lecha of Abraham and Sarah end up paving the path for all of us. And every test that they succeeded in, which we'll soon hear some of the tests, it's not only they passed the test, great. You passed the self-sacrifice test. You passed the faith in God test. It gave us the energy to pass those tests. When a Jew walked into the crematoriums and called out, Ani ma'amin be'emunah shalema b'vias HaMashiach, I believe in God and the coming of Mashiach, the redemption, where did they get that energy to call that out at the most horrific, inhumane, horrific point in their lives? Because it was an Avram and Sarah, thousands of years before them, who were called to do things in self-sacrifice, and they accomplished self-sacrifice so that the road was paved spiritually. The sparks were revealed for future generations to be able to have that self-sacrifice. You have the wealth of your grandparents, the real estate portfolio of your grandparents. You can build on that wealth. It's much harder to start from scratch. So Avram and Sarah's dedication and leadership, as we'll soon see, paved the way for each and every one of us to be who we can be, an Abraham and a Sarah. Each and every one of us can be an Abraham and Sarah. There's no doubt about it. They paved the way spiritually, metaphorically, for us to be able to be who we can be. They cut through. That's what it means. Maisa of a similar banim. Whatever they did, created the whatever pathways you want to call, spiritual pathways, neural pathways, for us to succeed in our lives. Does anybody want to add anything before we move on to a few more interesting points, and then we're going to go into some very exciting stories here. Game of Thrones, I call it. House of Dragons, whatever part you want to know. Anybody want to add anything? Shelley, you have anything you want to add?
Oh, it's wonderful to listen to it. It's beautiful.
So, Denise, you want to say something?
I'm going to be a good listener right now, but thank you, Freida.
Okay, no, just opening up the floor.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
On talking.
Appreciate it.
So now, I like to share, by the way, what resonates with me, so I hope that's okay. So I usually try to share things that resonate with me. So going back now to the three places Rochelle wanted to say something?
Oh, no.
Okay. So remember we just questioned, why does God say, leave the country, leave your homeland, leave the parents' home? If you leave the country, you left everything. And if you're going to emphasize, do it the right way. Leave your parents' home, leave your homeland, leave your country. Because God was not talking only about geography, like we just said. Yes, Abraham and Sarah were leaving Haran and going on a trip to the promised land. The opposite of Haran. By the way, the word Haran, Mesopotamia, means anger. Haran was a place of anger, immorality, ethics. Not only they were idolaters, they believed in, they worshipped, good morning, Diane, they worshipped idolatry. They were unethical, immoral people. So Abraham and Sarah were leaving Haran, an angry place, a bitter place, a place of misery, and going to a promised land, a land of milk and honey, of joy and happiness, and spiritual energy, positive energy. They were leaving negativity to go forth to a happy place. Again, not only geography wise, but in an emotional, psychological level. Sometimes you're not moving out of your house. You're moving out of those places and emotional mindsets that are holding you back. Why am I waking up every morning upset and angry? Why am I not feeling content in my life? Why am I not feeling happy? You know, and that's very, very important because I know when I'm in a bad mood, the entire family's in a bad mood. They always say, Mommy's in a bad mood. Everybody run for the hills. And when I'm in a good place, my whole family's in a good place. We really do set the tempo for the home and for life.
Mhm.
So why am I waking up in Haran? Why am I waking up feeling anxious, angry, upset, unhappy? You have to sit down and figure out how to get out of Haran and go to the land of Israel. And we're going to discuss in a minute how to do that. What are like sometimes the first steps? Sometimes, you're kind of stuck. But so God was telling us something very interesting. And, I love philosophy. So I'm going to bring this in. There were three of the Jewish greatest geniuses were three Jews, and they were three of the greatest philosophies that existed. Not that we believe in the philosophy, but who can remember three of the greatest that have transformed society for better or for worse? So first you have Karl Marx, was a Yiddish boy. Did you know that? He's the creator of communism, socialism. What did he say? What did he say? Who remembers? That we're a product of society, of social forces. That's why he wanted communism, all for one and one for all. And we know that's the biggest baloney that ever existed. Communism is not all for one and one for all at all. That's what God says. You have to leave that country, that society, influences of society. That's what it means. Abraham went alone, Abraham and Sarah. They went alone because no one else believed like they believed. So God is telling Abraham in our generation, when you come across a Marx, got to leave that behind. Who was the next one of the greatest Jewish thinkers that existed? Spinoza. Remember the famous Spinoza? By the way, his name was Baruch Spinoza. His Hebrew name was Baruch. What did Spinoza say in the 1600s? That humans, are victims of our instincts and biological drives. We have no control. We have biological drives. We have instincts. Goodbye. It's not your fault. God says. Genetic determination is another word for it. God says to Avram, leave the house, your birthplace. Don't blame things on the instinct on genetic determination. I gave you free choice. If you have a disposition to be stingy, you break that disposition. Give $1 for charity, give a penny for charity, give 10 cents for charity. You have to break your genetic disposition. You have to leave that behind. And lastly, who's another one of the greatest thinkers who happened to be Jewish? Freud. Sigmund Freud. His Hebrew name? Shlomo. Shlomo Freud. Shleimele, they called him. In the shtetl, they called him Shleimele. Lived in the 1930s. And what did he say? Everything is a result of the traumas of childhood. Your parents, even in the womb. God says, no. Leave the house of your parents. You can grow, you can leave behind, you can change those traumas, even if there was a trauma. So you have here three brilliant thinkers that existed, Jews, and God is telling Abraham, but not only telling Abraham and Sarah, telling us, when you have these three types of challenges, society is impacting you. Everyone is voting like that. Maybe I should also vote like that. Everyone is doing that. Maybe I should also be doing that, whatever it is. You born this way. My parents raised me this way. What are you blaming me? Or lastly, you could say it's my childhood trauma. I was abused, God forbid. other things that happened in my life. My parents were very stingy. My parents were like this. My parents were like that. Maybe it even happened in the womb. I don't know. God says never become a victim to any of these, even we call it external, even though they're really not external things that happen in life. Go forth. Leave these things behind. I'm not saying this is an easy transition. This is a lifelong pursuit. How we always have to tackle things that are happening. It's not something, overnight. Yeah, guess what? We learned the Torah portion. You got to leave everything behind. Really? This is a lifelong pursuit. This is our journey in life. This is what we have to be doing. Lech lecha, go for yourself. And when you go for yourself, you really go for the universe. This is the time to say, ask not what your country can do for you, as John F. Kennedy said, ask what you could do for your country. Don't ask what God can do for you every day. Sometimes you have to say, God, what can I do for you today? You know why? Because if you ask that question, first of all, there's a paradigm shift, because we're all used to asking for things. I need this and I need that. What happens if you woke up one morning and you say, God, what can I do for you today? What you're really asking is, what can I do for me? Because your soul is your godly part. You have God in you. You're really asking yourself, what can I do for myself? What can I do for you, God? What can I do for my inner soul, myself? And that's where you will find your greatest freedom and growth and journey and happiness. Because when your inner self is happy, content, serene, serenity flows outward. The spiritual impacts the physical. And once we know that little secret, it changes how we live everything. That's what it is. So this is what God is telling Abraham and Sarah, and us through Abraham and Sarah. Anybody want to share, add, question? Diana, you heard me say good morning. Sorry, go ahead, Rochelle. Yes, please.
So basically in the Torah, it's saying, for all of us that we have to leave our childhood homes and really become our own self and have our own beliefs and follow our own guidance. And I'm 100% agree with that. How do you sort of reconcile, and maybe it's not in these teachings, but overall in Judaism, like the Torah says that, but then the sort of widespread cultural, execution of that, like there's so much pressure, like, marry a Jewish person. This is how you do it. These are the rules. You have to do it this way. It just seems like a little bit to me, and I just don't understand, like hypocritical. It's like the Torah is telling you, find yourself, listen to your heart, but then Judaism as sort of culture is more preaching, this is how we do it. And there's so much judgment in that. Not all, obviously there's lots of different forms of Judaism, but, especially in, Orthodox or modern Orthodox communities.
That's a very, very brilliant question, and very complex in the sense that it has a very lengthy discussion on that. What I always feel, and even this is for myself as well, is I always feel, I can't tackle it all at once. It's just too much. So we start off, I think, with journeys and with Torah, realizing two things. It's not all or nothing. That's, first of all, very important to know. And you first start by tapping into the small things. Like you mentioned, the baby steps. The baby steps. There's one Torah. What is Torah? Which I explained, and I'll say it again, is very important. It's God's infinite wisdom given to us to navigate the universe. So everything that's in the Torah is in the world. If it's not in the world, if it's not in the Torah, it's not in the world, because it's the Kabbalah says, Istakla baraisa bara alma. God didn't create a universe and then write a Torah to match it up. God created the blueprint of the world, the architectural plan, which is called the Torah, the Bible. and use that to build the universe. So if it's not in the architectural plan, the architect, Almighty God, did not deviate from the plan even on one iota. How do we know? Because the Zohar, which is the book of splendor based on the Kabbalah, the book of Kabbalah, the secrets of the Torah, God tells us there, I put whatever's in the Torah is in the world. It's not in the Torah. If it's not in the Torah, it's not in the world. Even future inventions, spaceships and everything. We once had a whole discussion about that, but now there's no time. So it's not a matter, I think, of reconciling. It's a matter of whenever you're faced with a choice, even a small little choice, you start being more conscious when you're in touch with yourself of what the choice should be. What the choice should be. And it is these small little choices in life or directions we take that start creating that connection to God and our godly soul and our spiritual selves. So I'll give you a simple choice, something very simple. Friday night is Shabbat, right? I'm not Shabbos observant. The person can say, Shabbos doesn't work for me. Saturday is the day we have to do all the chores. We're both working parents. I'm CEO. My husband also has a job. Take a little step. Friday night dinner. Doesn't have to everyone eat dinner. Sit down, light the Shabbos candles on time and have that dinner. It doesn't have to be these dramatic moves, these dramatic choices, slowly. And when that's working well and your family enjoys that time together, then suddenly other things start happening. So you have to open up the door in some way in that. And again, I have people come to me, they say, but my father and mother were atheists. And I can't reconcile that. My mother and father always told me there's no God, there's no God, there's no God. What should I do? Even the influences, again, of family, it hurts. Again, it's all about the small steps. Am I in some way answering your question, Rochelle, or no?
Kind of, but maybe it's a big question. So I don't know if you can answer it.
No, there are. Ask me again another point. Add another point.
I guess from what I'm taking away from the Torah, from this teaching, is that everyone needs to find their own true self and
Right.
listen to their guidance about what is true for them and how they want to lead their lives.
Right. Yes.
Leave behind the programming of culture and even of their immediate families.
Right. Correct.
Truth. And that truth is universal. I mean, it's what the Torah is teaching. Be a good, listen to yourself, all the normal stuff. But then I just find like overall in religion, and maybe it's just people's understanding, execution of it, when you have observant, Jewish families and their children go off into the world, they're not typically promoting them to find their own understanding of religion. There's so much pressure to conform and to follow through with their upbringing. So it's like, on one hand, the Jewish teaching is find your true self. On the other hand, it feels very controlling and, has so many rules and it needs to be done a certain way. So I guess it's more my question. Are people not understanding the Torah correctly? Is it people's teaching of it that's incorrect? Like for example, I have family members that are raised modern Orthodox, and now they're teenagers or they're actually in college, and they're really struggling with, they believe in some sort of higher power, but there's so much judgment from their families of this is the way, this is Judaism, you need to do Shabbat, or you need to do all these things. And they're not really given the freedom and flexibility to find that God of their own understanding and listen to their own truth, because religion has, just so there just seems like there's a lot of pressure. Like on one hand, the Torah is saying, listen to yourself. On the other hand, the Jews who are supposed to be following the Torah are not listening to that advice in their own lives.
Gotcha. And exactly so. And I'll tell you what it is, because I have my own children. And people ask me, are your children religious Jews? And thank God they are. I have to tell you that there's no way that 2022 society has not influenced every facet of life and Jewish religious life. The challenges facing, whether you're born like I was born in a Hasidic Lubavitcher family in Brooklyn, New York, the challenges facing, when I was a little girl, we never heard of any religious Jew in my community, drug addict, alcoholism, abuse. Maybe it wasn't discussed. Maybe it was hidden. We didn't have the internet yet, right? And now it's all in the forefront. And we're finally catching up because they used to say by religious Jews, they don't so much have that, but now it's rampant. But we cannot say we cannot say that it is because they're religious or because they're so intense that this is why it's happening. Okay, so just like somebody said, I met a religious Jew and he's a ganef, he's a thief. How do you reconcile it? I'm like, I can't reconcile it. Just because he has long side locks doesn't make him honest, you know? So the thing is that also the parents who grew up very religious have children who are now not following, they're not, like you said, keeping Shabbat, eating kosher. And they're discovering their own path, so to speak. And that is a very, very big struggle in society today, that kids who were brought up, let's say, very what we call religious, Orthodox, Hasidic, are not anymore that. And everyone has, again, their own story, their own journey. And I always, when I speak to anybody like that, I always say to myself, and actually I'm bringing this up in the next point, the approach, it's never condemning. It's never, oh, you've swayed, you're not worth anything. It's more looking at the person as an individual and saying to them, Lech Lecha, you got to figure out what's going on with you. Why? There's always a reason why, for example, a kid who grew up in a beautiful, affluent neighborhood, got the best education, went to every good school, and now the kid is on drugs. The kid is drinking. The kid has no job. Why? What happened to him? What happened? Whether it's a Jewish person or a secular person, you have to figure out why is that person's journey now going that way. So even among religious Jews, non-religious Jews, secular Jews, whatever title you want to use, this is the story of our lives, the imperfect lives. This is what it is. So speak to someone who's religious and very content and happy and fulfilled in their life. They don't feel any restrictions. And then speak to another person. You have to find out why in their lives did they find this so miserable and restrictive? What happened, or what is it about their lives that they're not, for example, appreciating the mitzvahs, the Torah, and so on? So it's not, I don't think it's like it's every person individually has to look in the mirror and feel what is going on in my life. You understand? I don't know if I answered the question, but it's kind of that it really doesn't matter whether you grew up that way or didn't grow up that way. It's why am I this way now? Why am I this way now? And it's very hard for parents. But like my brother is a lecturer, an orator, and he counsels a lot of families. And I just listened to him give a little talk, and he said parents come to him, my son doesn't keep Shabbos. My son doesn't wear his kippah anymore. Rabbi, what should I do? And my brother says something so powerful. He says, give your son a hug, give him a nice home-cooked meal, and stop asking him why he's not wearing his kippah or eating kosher. He doesn't need you to ask him now about his religious piety. He needs from you a hug, love, acceptance as a parent. I think that sums up to me maybe a little bit how we approach things all the wrong way. Sometimes what your child needs is not you loading it on. Why aren't you doing it the way Bubby and Zadie did it? Grandma and Grandpa. More like, what do you need from me now? I need love. I'm going through a very traumatic part of my life. I don't want to share it with you. I need from you love. I need from you just a nice, comfy bed. Or I need my laundry done. Any little silly thing as a parent. That's sometimes our response. Never judge. You do not know what's going on with people. You do know what's happening with them, even your own children. You know, when your child throws the knapsack across the floor when they come home from school, I hate school and I hate you even more. It's all your fault. You say, oh yeah, I'm a terrible mother. I need a therapist. You say, my kid had a terrible day today. My kid needs alone time, or my kid needs me to make him his best hot dog, burger, whatever. So we always know it's never about that the kid ate a treif sandwich or the kid desecrated Shabbos when our whole family, it's always about something else. And at that moment is its acceptance, not condemnation, not judgy. So I think as we study, I think more things will unravel in a good way. I mean, be revealed. Unravel is negative. Yes, Jane, go ahead.
Well, I think what you're saying and what Rochelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Rochelle is saying, she's thinking it's saying, go find your own way. But I think the real meaning is go find your own way through Torah. It doesn't mean go find your own way through any other religion or any other culture. Find your own way like what Freida just did. It was so beautiful, dealing with her children in such a loving way that her Torah study has given her.
That's a point I missed. You're right.
Yeah.
Also, Rochelle, you know what I find in everybody? It's not always about, this is something I learned from my husband, actually. He told me this. It's not always that when somebody in a discussion, you have to be right.
Right.
It's also sometimes about a slow transition in life. You know what I mean? It's not always about I'm right and you're wrong. God said to eat kosher. If you don't, it's more like when you study Torah and you start off with, like I say, parts that you enjoy, Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, everything, and you start internalizing the wisdom of God, certain things start changing the way you look at life, the way you look at things, the way you realize what is needed from you and what your soul needs and wants. So sometimes I say to people, just start with something you enjoy or something you like. And then the rest comes because you're going to see it's going to open up portals, neuropaths. It's like when you start a diet or you start a certain exercise. Your knees are killing you. Everything hurts. Slowly, spiritual sparks are revealed. Portals open up. And again, your journey might not be my journey. But it's so interesting because we discussed this in Genesis, and then I want to go to this beautiful part because there's actually two beautiful parts, but I want to share this one especially, is that in Genesis, I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay, whatever. Sorry. In Genesis we discussed that the Torah is God's wisdom. It's the manual for your new computer. So you could say, what do I need a manual for? I know I'm a tech wizard. But if you really want to tap into every one of those possible use of the computer, you have the manual. And when something goes wrong, there's a troubleshooting section. So yeah, you could say, I don't need a manual. I'll be true to myself. I'm a very smart person. I can find my own way. But guess what? Know that there's a manual. So when you're feeling stuck, go in and see what does the manual say. That's the secret. So, that's that. If you want to tap into your truest potential, you want to become the best pianist because we're given such musical talent. You can find your own path to be a musician, but imagine if you had someone teaching you how to tap into the greatest talent you possess. Which way would you go? That's what it really is. But it is a slow journey and sometimes a tedious journey and sometimes a painful journey. But it's there. The journey is there. And hopefully a happy journey. So there's two more very magnificent points in the Torah portion. We only have like 10 minutes. So I'm trying to see, do you want to discuss a little bit of the relationship of Abraham and Sarah quickly, just to see, me, I always love to give the feminine energy. the powerful energy. So there's a very sad story that happens that Abraham and Sarah, there's a famine. They're now in the land of Israel. There's a famine, which is another one of the tests. Because why take Abraham and Sarah and then create a famine, right? You just took them out of Haran, you brought them to the land of Israel, and now there's a famine. Thank you very much for bringing me to a country that's going through economic crisis and there's now recession or a depression. So Abraham and Sarah have to go where there's food. Oh, by the way, did I jump to the next topic too quick? Okay. So where are they going? They go down to Egypt. But the Torah says they went up to Egypt, which is interesting. This is an interesting little tidbit. You don't go up to Egypt from Israel, you go down from Israel. But I'm going to explain this in a minute. And Abraham and Sarah are coming to the borders, to border patrol. And Abraham says to Sarah, tell them you are my sister. Tell them you are my sister. I want to read this to you. Tell them you're my sister. Because if you don't tell them you're my sister, what's going to happen? Pharaoh, the king, had people watching. Any woman who came to the border and was beautiful and gorgeous was brought to the harem of the king to add to his women who he used, and the husband was killed. So Avram says to Sarah, listen to the story, tell them you're my sister. So now let me ask you a question. Doesn't it sound a little cowardice? Avram tells Sarah, tell them you're my sister, so they live, they don't kill me, because I'm a brother. A brother is not a threat, but she should be taken to the harem. He's not worried about her, he's worried about his own life. What about what's going to happen to her? So the commentaries discuss this in great intensity. One answer is that I loved is it's not Abraham was a coward. You have to know who Sarah was. Sarah's real name was Yiska. When Abraham married her, he nicknamed her Sarah. What does Yiska mean? Yiska means gaze. Whenever you gazed at Sarah, she was gorgeous. Her beauty was outstanding. But more than that, she was a prophetess. She gazed into the future. She gazed into prophecy. She was a very holy, spiritual woman. So when Avram tells Sarah, tell them I'm your brother, you know why? Because he knew that an angel accompanied her. He saw, remember, he's also very special. He saw an angel walking with Sarah wherever she went. So he knew that Pharaoh would never even put his pinky on her. Because you see what happened, the minute Pharaoh tried to take her into and have relations with her, he's stricken with a plague. And he realizes, and he sends her back to Abraham, and they leave with tremendous wealth because he kind of rewards them, knowing they're special people. So it's not that Abraham didn't feel his wife is important. He knew she was protected by an angel. He saw an angel accompanying her. Whereas himself, he didn't look at himself as he's so special. He says, they're surely going to kill me. And if I'm dead, I can't even organize a rescue mission. There's no one around to save her. So it's not his lack of care for Sarah or his cowardice, but rather knowing she would be protected. And going back, why did he call her Sarah? Because Sarah means my princess and my superior. When he married Sarah and he saw Yiska, how spiritual and holy, and she was a prophetess, he said, you're my Sarah. He lauded her potential and her power. And you see that throughout their marriage, it was a partnership. When the three angels come to visit him in his tent, it doesn't say, he said, Sarah, we have guests, go cook the meat and I'll go entertain them. Avram went into the kitchen and started to cook. Out their lives, you see a tremendous love and a tremendous partnership. Avram realizes and knows how his wife is a spiritual prophetess. She is outstanding. She's beautiful inside and out. And he knew she would be protected. And why the Torah says he went up to Egypt is because there's a reason God made a famine. God wanted Abraham to reveal the spiritual spark, says the Kabbalah, in Egypt, and to see what's going on in the world. Abraham was not a leader of one little tribe in the land of Israel. Let's study Torah together. Let's be religious together. Let's do everything together. Abraham was a leader to the world. And God needed Abraham to be exposed to the world, to the real world, to a guy like Paro, to a famine, to struggles, to challenges, because a leader who doesn't experience cannot lead if he doesn't have that, if he hasn't seen the world, if he hasn't felt the pain. There's a story, was a Holocaust survivor, like millions of Holocaust survivors, felt miserable, unhappy. How could he go on with his life? So unhappy, such a horrible experience. So somebody said to him, let me bring you to the Rebbe. So they brought him to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he was 75 years old. And he told the Rebbe his story of his suffering in Auschwitz. And the Rebbe sat and cried with him. They cried together. What could the Rebbe say to the guy? You didn't suffer. The Rebbe cried. The Rebbe showed empathy. And he says, the Rebbe, now tell me what to do. The Rebbe said, you know the story of Abraham? You're 75, Abraham was 75. And at age 75, God says to Abraham, Lech, Lecha. Leave, go for you, leave Haran, leave Auschwitz behind. Leave the misery, the pain, and the anger behind, and go forth and rebuild your life. That's what you have to do. Find joy and happiness in your new life. And the Holocaust survivor wrote the story, I forgot his name, he wrote that, and when he left the Rebbe, he felt like a fog had lifted. Somebody who understood his pain, but somebody who also said to him, yes, you suffered, and we don't know why God did this. I have no answer for you. Now you have to go out of Haran and move forth in life. Find joy and happiness. Find what you deserve. You deserve joy and happiness. You suffered so badly. This is a leader. This is an Avraham who understands pain, misery, can empathize, has seen it, but shows us a way out, how to leave Egypt. And going back to the point that the Kabbalah explains, wherever you're put in the world, you're there for a reason. Why? Your plane might have been diverted to Boston. I didn't want to go to Boston. I was heading to Washington, D.C. Because something there you have to accomplish. You have to reveal spiritual sparks. You got lost at a certain truck stop. There's a reason you got lost at that truck stop when you didn't follow the directions or your directions didn't work. There are certain spiritual sparks that have to be revealed in certain places by you. You have something you got to do there. You don't know what. That's why whenever my husband and I get lost, this might sound a little silly, but we got lost so many times because my husband doesn't believe in directions. Typical husband. We come to the place and we take out food and we make a bracha. We make a blessing on something. We say, because there's a reason we got lost. There's a reason we ended up here. So let's reveal some of the sparks. Maybe that's why we're here, because we're not all there, So Avram and Sarah had to reveal the spiritual sparks in Egypt. Why? Because hundreds of years later, the Jewish people would become slaves in Egypt. And Avram and Sarah went to Egypt, were challenged in Egypt because Sarah was abducted, rose above the challenge. She was freed. God protected her with the angel. And now, years later, when the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, the energy of freedom was already put in place by Avram and Sarah. So you never know why you were put somewhere. And maybe you had to be there so somebody in the future would be able to come out of it in some way you don't even know. Which comes to the point that whatever you do impacts the future. It's never about, I'm harming myself. What do you care? It's my life, my body, my home, my family. Leave me alone. Whatever you do impacts the future. Whatever you do always has positive and, God forbid, the opposite of positive repercussions. You may not see it now. You may see it hundreds of years later. And Moses was born and took the Jewish people out of Egypt. And where did he get that energy? Because Avram and Sarah were there and they overcame a Pharaoh then, allowing the Jewish people to future overcome a Pharaoh, have that energy. The sparks were there. The sparks remained. And later on, their great-great-great-grandchildren were saved from slavery. So never underestimate something you do, small or large, that will impact years and years later. So in conclusion, what we have here is Avram and Sarah have paved the way for all generations, for us to go to our journey and tap into our own potential and also find our own way. Each one of us has a purpose, a reason, a mission, a journey we have to take. For some people, it's a journey of a lifetime, most people. For some, it's a shorter journey, a longer journey, a happier journey, maybe not always the happiest journey. But the trick of the whole thing in summation is to Lech Lecha, start your journey. Start your journey in one little way. Somehow, some way, start your journey. Start your journey by adding a mitzvah to your life. Start your journey by studying something. Start your journey by doing something, if you haven't done it. Even the smallest thing, giving charity every day, doing an act of goodness, an act of kindness, talking to your children about something positive, giving them perspective, sitting around the dinner table and just chatting with your family. Sometimes we do that. We're on our phones and that's it. We don't chat with the kids or with the husband. We hang up a sign on the oven, dinner in the oven, preheat to 350. I'll be upstairs watching my Netflix series. Can you relate to that? And begin opening up those portals that allow you to express who you are in whichever way you can be. And then last thing I want to end off where God says to Abraham something very, very powerful, and then I'll let everybody go because we're a little over the time. God says to Abraham something very beautiful. He says, go out of the land, go to Israel, and I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse, and all the families of the earth will be blessed by you. So God says, I'm going to bless everyone who blesses you. But those who curse you, I will curse. Why is it reversed? If God says, I will bless all that bless you, God should say, I will curse all that curses you. Kabbalah says something fascinating, and then I'll leave with this. That when you have an intention to do good, to bless someone or do something good, just your intention and your thought brings God to bless you before you do the act, reward you before you do the act. So when you do the act of goodness, it's potent, it's powerful, it's supercharged because God blesses you already before you even did it. So let's say you say, you know what, I decided today I'm going to go visit this person in the hospital. I'm going to start visiting people in the hospital. Before you even get into your car and drive, God already rewarded you for the thought. And when you do it, it's supercharged because God already blessed you for wanting to do a blessing or a mitzvah. But when it comes to the negative, those who curse you, I will curse. It's reverse. God does not punish you for your thoughts. I'm not going to curse you if you don't do the act. If you think to yourself, boy, am I going to retaliate against that one? She did such a low down thing to me at that board meeting. Boy, am I going to get her or get him. You don't get punished. Well, I'm not going to use the word punished, but you don't get rewarded because you thought about doing it. But if you do it, then it has the negative repercussions of that negative energy. Only if you actually follow through. So the Kabbalah says, isn't that unbelievable? When you think of doing something good, God already supercharges it. When, God forbid, you think of doing something negative, nothing happens until you actually do it. God is not going to come after you because you thought of doing something. You thought of hurting someone. You thought of retaliating. You thought of being nasty. Till you're nasty, nothing happens. And one more little point, because this to me is mind-boggling. Look at the Hebrew language. It says, and those who curse you, I will curse, and those who bless you, and those who I will bless those who bless you. But it uses the cursing word, kalel. It doesn't use the same root form, I will curse, or. It uses a different word. So the commentaries say, why not use the same root word? Just like by blessing, baruch, baruch, kalel, kalel. No, God uses the word or. You know why? Because it doesn't only mean blessing, it doesn't only mean cursing, it means light. When someone comes to you and lashes out at you, curses you, yells at you, abuses you, is nasty to you, how should you respond? Says the Kabbalah. Or with love, with kindness, with goodness, with compassion. Like we said before, it's never really about you. It's always about what's going on with that person. Now, we're not talking about if you're getting hurt, God forbid, then run for the hills. Don't respond with a kiss. But when someone lashes out at you for whatever reason, right? Even a relative, anybody, someone lashes out at you. I hate you. You're the worst wife in the world. You're the worst husband. You're the worst child. You're the worst mother. Or you're the worst neighbor. No one should have a neighbor like you. Say, I'm sorry you're having such a terrible day. Is there anything I could help with? Or respond with love and compassion and light. That person doesn't need a slap. That person needs to be recognized that something hurts. Something's painful. You have I remember I was running, Circle Friends Special Needs program, for those who are familiar, and one of the mothers came over to me during the program, and she was like screaming at me. And in a soft voice, I spoke to her, and one of my daughters was volunteering, and she says, Ma, how do you put up with that abuse? A chutzpah, I would have slapped her. I was going to punch her up for you. And I'm like, no, you don't understand what was going on. She wasn't angry at me. It sounded like she was angry at me. She was angry at her life. She's having a very difficult time with her child. The response can't be, oh yeah, look at her. She's nasty, I'm nasty. No, or when someone comes and vents and you happen to be the victim, you're there, or whatever the scenario is, the response has to be love, compassion, light, goodness. That's the response. Again, we're not talking about abuse or someone who's really like someone rams you in the back of your car. You're not going to respond and say, oh yeah, thank you for ramming the back of my car. We're talking about in a situation. Always be the one in control, even when you're right and even when they're wrong. Respond with light. That really is the ingredient. Respond with light. Darkness always needs light. Anger always needs love. And unhappiness needs compassion and empathy. And no one is an angel, trust me. We all respond, we yell back, we scream back. But I think when you discover this secret, I know for myself, I found I was a happier person too. Because I was always able to, it takes training. I train myself to take a step back and realize. Because I would come home sometimes and I said, did you believe what that person said to me in shul? I was horrified. My husband said, what did you say? I said nothing. I said, good Shabbos. I hope to see you soon. And that's what it is. When you learn to take a step back, you become happier, and also you feel more in control. I never felt good when I yelled back at the person. I always felt bad later, like, why did I respond like that? So God says, I will bless those that bless you. And if somebody curses you, I will curse. But God uses the word or, because even in a curse, even in negativity, we have to respond with love and compassion. So Lech Lecha is very packed. It'll be up on YouTube, the video. A few of the women asked. So yeah, you could. The channel is Freida Hecht. I want to wish everybody a good Shabbos and like.